You know, Resident Evil 0 is kind of the black sheep of the series, but I also think it's one of the more interesting experiments Capcom ever tried. Because instead of giving you just one character to manage, it gives you two, at the same time. And it just says, good luck, now keep them both alive. You have to constantly swap back and forth throughout the whole game, dividing ammo and health, deciding who's better suited for what room or puzzle, and just hoping the AI doesn't get itself killed while you're busy doing something else. This system really has a lot of tension and chaos, and in a lot of cases, sometimes a lot of frustration. But it's also the most honest version of teamwork the series has ever done. Because in Resident Evil 0, in my opinion, neither Rebecca nor Billy would have survived alone. And I feel like that's kind of the point. So RE0 sits in a really interesting spot in the series. It's a prequel to the original game. It takes place right before the mansion. But it doesn't just exist to fill in the timeline. It feels like Capcom was trying to reinvent what survival horror could be right before they changed it forever. We follow Rebecca Chambers. She's the medic from the STARS Bravo team, the one that we know and love from the first game. And Billy Coen, an ex-Marine who's been convicted of murder and on death row. They run into each other after Bravo's helicopter crashes in the Arklay Mountains, and together they uncover the events that lead directly into Resident Evil 1. But what's cool about this one isn't just when it happens, it's how it was built. Because originally this game started development on the N64, and that changed a lot of things. Back then Capcom wanted to make a Resident Evil that could run entirely from a cartridge, no disc and no loading screens, but that came with a big problem. The N64 didn't have much storage space, so the team had to come up with ways to handle more of the game's systems in real time, instead of relying on duplicated assets or long load screens. Those limitations ended up shaping the game's entire identity. The idea of dropping items on the floor, managing two characters at once, and swapping between them instantly. It all came out trying to make the most of limited memory. The game was supposed to run seamlessly. No transitions, no magic boxes linking your gear. If you wanted to keep something, you had to manage it yourself and just figure it out. Now I know a lot of people are going to bring up in the comments about RE2. If the N64 could run RE2, why can't it handle this? And the answer is kind of simple. RE2 on N64 wasn't built from scratch. It was already finished on PlayStation and then compressed down by another studio. They basically squeezed an existing game into a smaller box. RE0, on the other hand, was being built for the N64 completely from the ground up. With all these real-time systems constantly running in memory, two active characters, all items tracked live in the world, no loading screens, it just pushed the cartridge way too far. Mikami even said it straight up became impossible to fit everything on there. So, Capcom moved development over to the GameCube, but instead of scrapping those experimental ideas, they kept them. They really believed in what they'd started. And that's where the partner system came in, being able to switch between Rebecca and Billy at any time. Each character had their own strengths. Rebecca could mix herbs and handle chemistry puzzles, while Billy could take more damage and move heavier objects. You had to use both of them strategically, not just for puzzles, but for survival in general.
What could have done this?
I don't think Capcom really called it an experiment in control, but I think that's what it was. The whole design was about control, how much of it you have, and how much the game takes away from you. You're juggling two inventories, two health bars, and trying to keep up with your own anxiety because if either one of them dies, it's game over. That's what makes Resident Evil 0 stand out. It wasn't just a prequel for the lore, it was a genuine design experiment. Capcom pushed the limits of the old formula, testing what would happen if they stripped away convenience and made the player handle everything directly. It's stuck in this weird middle space between old and new generations, but I feel like that's what gives it its charm. So the real heart of Resident Evil 0 is the idea of managing two people at once. It's not just a story about Rebecca and Billy. It's about what it means to survive when you're forced to think like both of them at the same time. As I had mentioned, Capcom called it the partner zapping system, which has been in previous games, but never like this. And it completely changes how you play. You can switch between Rebecca and Billy instantly, or split them up to handle different parts of a puzzle. And on paper it sounds pretty simple, but in practice it turns the game into this constant balancing act. You're not just watching one health bar anymore, you're watching two. You're not just managing one inventory, you're managing 2 bags of limited space. And whatever you drop stays exactly where it fell. Rebecca and Billy each have their own strengths. Rebecca is a medic. She can mix the herbs, handle chemicals, and generally deal with all the delicate stuff. But she's very fragile. If you leave her alone too long or take a hit you shouldn't have, it really hurts and you can notice it very fast. Billy's the muscle here. He's the tank. He can take a lot more damage, push heavy objects, and he does a better job at keeping enemies off of you when things are getting rough. But he can't mix healing items, so he ends up relying on whoever Rebecca can prepare. They're opposites, but the game doesn't let one carry the other. The real tension comes from how you decide to use them. Do you keep them together and risk getting both trapped in a small room, or split them up to cover more ground? Who carries the shotgun? Who holds the key items? Do you leave the healing supplies with Rebecca since she's the medic, or hand them to Billy because he's more likely to take a hit? Every decision feels small in the moment, but over time they add up, because one mistake on either side can really cost you the run. And that's what makes the system so unique. It's not just multitasking, it's about trust. You'll find yourself switching between them constantly, trying to plan 2 moves ahead. If you're not careful, you can literally strand one character with no ammo, low health, and no way to reach the other. The game doesn't babysit you. It expects you to think like a team leader. It wants you to feel that mental split, like you're juggling 2 lives that depend on each other. Even the AI keeps that pressure on you. You can set your partner to attack or stay passive, but they're never perfect. Sometimes Billy will waste ammo, sometimes Rebecca will take a hit you didn't see coming. The unpredictability is part of the fear. It's not just about the zombies anymore, it's about control and how easily you can lose it. And the puzzles lean into that. You'll get sections where one character needs to hold a lever while the other one runs through a door, or places only Rebecca can access because of her chemistry skills or her size. Billy might have to shove a crate to make a path, or hold off enemies while she's solving something nearby. The game keeps reminding you they're stronger together, but they're not built the same. You can't brute force teamwork. You have to actually coordinate it.
Rebecca!
And what's cool is how this ties back to the original design philosophy for the N64 version. Everything's happening in real time, no invisible systems fixing your mistakes. If you leave an item on the floor, it stays there. If you split them up, you're the one who has to get them back together. It's all on you. That sense of responsibility makes every step feel heavier. And that's really the genius of this system. It doesn't just give you 2 characters, it gives you 2 minds to manage. You're constantly shifting between their perspectives, adapting to their limits, and thinking through their survival. It makes Resident Evil 0 feel like a true cooperative experience, even though you're playing alone. And by the end, you really start to realize something. Neither of them would have made it out by themselves. Rebecca has the brains and compassion, but she wouldn't survive without Billy's strength. Billy's capable and grounded, but without Rebecca's trust, he'd never make it out of that mountain. The whole game teaches you that survival isn't just about resources or your aim. It's about learning how to rely on someone else.
Hey, Queenie! Feast on this!
And I feel like that's what this entry does best. It makes teamwork feel like tension. It turns your planning into pressure, and in doing that, it finds a version of survival horror that's just as psychological as it is physical. If you made it this far into the video and you're enjoying it, be sure to click that sub button. I'm working my way through every Resident Evil, even the side games and the spin-offs. And Resident Evil 4 is up next, so you definitely won't want to miss that one. Also drop a like and a comment, it really does help the channel out a lot. And for all the people on mobile, if you're feeling generous and want to help the channel grow directly, hit the hype button. It should be right next to the like button, and what it does is give the video hype points. It's basically a way of telling the algorithm, hey, this one's good, show it to more people. My biggest video so far is Resident Evil 2, and I think that's because it actually ranked in the top 100 for the hype points that week. But I hope everyone's still enjoying the Resident Evil series. It's insane to me to think that I was just a little over 1,000 subs when I uploaded the first video, about 2 months ago. And now we're about to hit 5,000. That's absolutely crazy. I seriously cannot thank you all enough for all the support I've been getting lately. And one more thing, I have a Discord that's starting to get pretty active. I hang out in there quite a bit. Sometimes even record and edit live in there. There's a link down in the description if you want to join that community. I'm super excited to see it's starting to get active as well. But alright, that's enough of that. Let's get back into it and talk about item management and why it's frustrating but pretty cool in my opinion. So if the partner system was Capcom's way of reinventing control, the inventory system in RE0 was where they completely threw the old rulebook out the window. Because in every other Resident Evil before this, you had safety nets. You had a shared item box, clean inventory management, the comfort of knowing that no matter where you drop something, it would show up in the next storage room. It was reassurance. You could experiment, make mistakes, and always fall back on that invisible connection tying the world together. But in RE0, that connection is gone. There are no item boxes, no shared storage, no magical system linking your progress. Everything you want to keep, every herb, weapon, key item, everything, has to exist somewhere in the world physically, dropped by you. If you don't have space, you drop it, and it stays there. That one change turns the entire game into a mental balancing act, because now the environment itself becomes your storage system. You're constantly looking around for spots that feel safe, a save room, a hallway near a puzzle, or an area that's just easy to access later. And that's where you start building your stash, and over time you start developing what I'd call like an item hub. You'll find a room that feels central enough to everything else, and that becomes your unofficial supply base. Maybe it's near a typewriter, or right outside a puzzle-heavy area. You start dropping ammo, healing items, and your spare weapons there. And it's not because the game tells you to at all, but it's just because you have to. It feels natural. And for a while, that works. You get comfortable. You know where everything is, but as you push deeper into the game, that system starts to collapse under its own weight. Your old hub zone starts getting too far away. You're in a new area, and now the distance between your resources and your progress start to matter. That's where my transport phase begins with this. You start carrying items from your old stash to your new one, shuffling back and forth between multiple doors and enemies, dragging your entire inventory network one room at a time. It's tedious, definitely, but it's also brilliant kind of in its own way, because what you're really doing is building your own survival infrastructure. You're creating routes, backup plans, supply lines, all without the game ever spelling it out for you. One of the best examples of that is the hookshot. You get it near the start of the game, but you'll need it near the end. It takes up 2 inventory slots, so you're not going to lug it around everywhere. Instead, you leave it behind, move forward, realize you need it again, and take the long trip back to retrieve it. It's frustrating, but it's also part of the puzzle. The game teaches you to think ahead, to treat your storage as an extension of your strategy. And by the time you're deep into the game, you're not just managing 2 characters anymore. You're managing an entire ecosystem of stuff you've placed throughout the whole game. You start remembering where everything is like a mental landmark. The shotgun's in the hallway on the 2nd floor, the red herbs by the save room, near the stairs. The grenade rounds are back in the kitchen. You build this web of personal geography that exists entirely in your head until you get those items into your hub zone that you've created. And that's what separates RE0 from the rest. Backtracking isn't filler anymore. It's part of your strategy. The stress doesn't just come from the enemies and the limited ammo. It comes from the way the game forces you to own your decisions. If you leave an item behind, that's on you. If you get trapped without enough healing, that's because you didn't plan well enough. It's a system that rewards foresight but punishes improvisation. You can't just wing it here. You have to think several moves ahead. A lot of players didn't like this system, and honestly I get it. It's clunky, it's slow, and it's very frustrating. It doesn't hold your hand at all. But at the same time, it's kind of pure. It strips survival horror down to its core: resource management, spatial awareness, and that feeling of unease that comes from never being fully prepared. And whether you love that or hate it, there's no denying what it adds. The tension isn't just about what's waiting around the next corner, it's about what you left behind. You start to realize the inventory itself has become another form of the enemy. It doesn't chase you, it doesn't attack you, but it just kind of waits for you. Sitting there reminding you that every choice you make has weight. That's RE0 in a nutshell. It's not just about surviving monsters, it's about surviving your own mistakes. By the time you spend a few hours in RE0, it really starts to feel like a totally different kind of tension from the other games. It's still that classic survival horror, that same slow pacing and deliberate movement, but the fear doesn't come from what's waiting around the corner anymore. It comes from everything you're trying to manage just to stay alive. Because compared to RE1 up through 3, where your main focus is things like exploration or planning for encounters, 0 makes you constantly aware of positioning, your logistics, teamwork. You're not just thinking, what's in the next room? You're thinking, where's my partner? Do we have enough ammo between us? Where did I leave that key item? It turns the act of survival into something methodical, almost managerial. That's what 0 adds to the series, a sense of realism that both kind of feels impressive and exhausting at the same time. Every action feels heavier because you're directly responsible for a lot more. You're tracking 2 characters, 2 inventories, and an entire network of items you've scattered throughout the game. And then when it all clicks, when you've planned perfectly, mapped everything out, and pull off a smooth run, you feel like a genius, like you actually earned your survival. But then when it doesn't, it's pretty miserable. You get punished pretty hard and instantly. A bad decision 10 rooms ago can spiral into complete disaster. You forget to move the right weapon forward, that's 10 minutes backtracking. Split up wrong, now one character's stranded with no healing and the other can't reach him. The stress that used to come from monsters and jump scares now come from your own judgment calls. And that's the trade-off. Resident Evil 1 through 3 struck that perfect balance of tension and flow. You always felt pressured, but the pace kept you moving. 0 doubles down on the tension and sacrifices the flow. It's slower and heavier and way more demanding. Some people found that immersive, others thought it was exhausting. But what's interesting is that this shift also changes what kind of fear the game creates. The older games scared you through atmosphere and uncertainty. The lighting, the way the rooms looked, the sound design. Not knowing what was ahead. 0 scares you through responsibility. It's not about being unprepared, it's about knowing exactly how unprepared you are. That's a different kind of horror. It's the anxiety of management instead of the fear of the unknown. And that's why I think Resident Evil 0 sits in such a weird space in the series. It's not bad at what it does, it's just focused on something completely different. It's more about that control than survival. You're not just surviving enemies, you're surviving the systems. You're fighting the inventory and the pacing, and sometimes even your own decision-making. And some people see that as pure survival horror. No hand-holding, no shortcuts, just you and the consequences of every move you make. Some other people see it as unnecessary friction, the moment where the series became too obsessed with micromanagement. But either way, I think it's cool and pretty interesting. Resident Evil 0 feels like that final experiment before the series moved on, before Resident Evil 4 came along and flipped everything towards action. You can almost see the pivot point here, a game obsessed with control right before the franchise decided to just completely let go of it. So getting into the story for RE0, like I said earlier, it takes place right before the first game. It's almost like the calm before the storm. But as we know, STAR's Bravo team is sent into the Arklay Mountains to investigate a string of murders, but things fall apart before they even begin. As we know, their helicopter goes down, communications fail, and Rebecca Chambers, the youngest member of the team, finds herself completely alone in the woods. And this is where the story really starts. She stumbles onto the Ecliptic Express, a luxury train belonging to the Umbrella Corporation. And at first it looks abandoned, but within minutes she's surrounded by zombies and a newer enemy, leeches.
But as of 2 years ago, when several conferences
The train starts moving, and she realizes she's trapped inside something far bigger than she understands. And here's where she meets Billy. Like I said earlier, he's a former Marine, on death row for being branded a murderer. And then throughout the game, they're forced to work together to survive, even though they don't trust each other.
Billy. Lieutenant Coen.
So, you seem to know me. Been fantasizing about me, have you?
Rebecca is a rookie trying to follow protocol, and Billy is a man already given up on it. That dynamic, innocence and guilt, becomes the emotional backbone of the entire story. And from that point on, the game never really slows down. The train derails after a massive crash, throwing them both near the grounds of the Umbrella training facility, an old, ornate mansion-like complex that used to serve as a school for Umbrella executives. Now it's abandoned, crawling with zombies and other crazy creatures, and filled with pieces of Umbrella's buried history.
The Umbrella Research Center? First general manager, Dr. James Marcus.
And this is where the prequel really connects to the rest of the series. Everything that happens inside the mansion in Resident Evil 1 begins here. The training facility belongs to Dr. James Marcus, one of Umbrella's founding members, a man who discovered the progenitor virus and used it to create a new strain through leech DNA. He saw his leeches as children, living extensions of himself. But when his work became too dangerous, Umbrella's other co-founders, Oswald E. Spencer and Edward Ashford, ordered his assassination. Except he didn't exactly die. Years later, Marcus's corpse was reanimated by his own experiments, by the queen leech that merged with his body. And what's left is this half-human, half-leech creature consumed entirely by revenge. His goal isn't to infect the world or profit from his discovery. It's to destroy Umbrella from within. And that's the twisted core of RE0. A story that's not about survival for its own sake, but about corporate fallout, betrayal, and revenge. As Rebecca and Billy move deeper into the facility, they start uncovering what Umbrella really was before the outbreak. Not just a company, but a collection of scientists competing for power. Every document and corpse tells that story. You see where the virus came from, how reckless the research was, and why the mansion incident was inevitable. For Rebecca, this is her first real nightmare. She begins the game as a nervous medic trying to follow orders, and by the end, she's someone who's seen what the company truly is. You can almost feel her worldview collapse. That shift from naive rookie to hardened survivor, and it makes her role in RE1 hit a lot harder in hindsight.
I live. Now I will have my revenge on Umbrella, and the world will burn in an inferno of hate.
You'll pay for what you've done.
We'll see which one of us is gonna die.
Billy's arc works in the opposite direction. He starts as a man who's already lost everything, someone written off as a criminal. And through Rebecca, he regains a sense of purpose. Their story intersects right in the middle. She learns strength through him, and he finds redemption through her. It's quiet, but it's there in the way they trust each other by the end of the game. In the small moments where they stop arguing and start surviving together. When the facility finally collapses and they destroy Marcus's mutated form, Rebecca records Billy as dead to protect him. It's a simple act of mercy that says more about her growth than anything else. She walks away towards the forest, towards the mansion, toward the next nightmare. And then the cycle continues.
Hey, that must be the old mansion that Enrico was talking about. I guess it's time to say goodbye.
What makes Resident Evil 0 so interesting in the broader lore is how it reframes the start of the series. It's not just about zombies or viruses. It's about the aftermath of human ambition. You see the cracks in Umbrella before the fall, the arrogance that built everything, and the ghosts of the people who made it all happen. It's a story that adds weight to what comes next, because now, when you step into the mansion at the start of Resident Evil 1, you already know what created it. And that's why Resident Evil 0 feels darker. Even though it's technically the beginning, it's not a hopeful prequel. It's a story that starts the end. We already know what's coming, and that knowledge hangs over every hallway and every leech, every room. It's not the rise of evil, it's the echo of it.
Found an aerial cable We can get out of this place.
Wait there, I'm coming.
Roger. The sooner we get out of here, the better. Out.
Resident Evil 0 is one of those rare cases where a game dares to change everything, and then no one ever tries it again. When it released, the reaction was pretty mixed. People praised how it looked, the lighting, the pre-rendered backgrounds, the way the camera framed every hallway like a painting. On a technical level, it was one of the most beautiful games on the GameCube. But the same things that made it different also divided people. The partner system, the item dropping, the constant swapping, it all broke the rhythm that players had come to expect from Resident Evil. In earlier games, the tension came from what was waiting behind the next door. Here, it came in what you were carrying and where you left it. That shift was really bold, but it changed the entire feel of the series. For some people, it added depth. They saw it as a natural evolution of survival horror. A version of the formula that demanded planning, patience, and long-term thinking. Every room became part of a bigger puzzle. Every mistake had left a mark, and it was stressful, but in a way that felt deliberate. For others, it just got in the way. The freedom to drop items anywhere meant you could also lose track of everything. Backtracking could feel like work instead of exploration. And without the shared item boxes, the clean structure that tied older Resident Evil games together were gone. That friction defined the game's identity. It was trying to move the genre forward, but in doing that, it ended up isolating itself. Even Capcom never repeated it. No later Resident Evil really ever fully brought back the manual item drop system, or the direct partner control in this exact form. In a way, it became an experiment frozen in time. You can see the traces of it in later games, in the teamwork of Resident Evil 5 and Revelations, or in how newer horror games make you think about weight and space. But nothing quite recaptured what this one tried to do. It was too specific and intricate, and maybe too ahead of its time. Commercially, it performed fine, but not spectacular. It sold alright on the GameCube, enough to justify its later HD remaster, which eventually crossed the million mark, but in the long run, it became more of a cult favorite than a mainstream hit. That cult following matters though. Over time, people came back to it, not for the perfect pacing or the combat, but for what it represented. It's the one Resident Evil that truly committed to its own logic. It didn't care about convenience. It wasn't trying to be cinematic or accessible. It was about control, space, and consequence. Three ideas that define survival horror at its core. Looking back now, Resident Evil feels like a crossroads. The last of the classic style, but also a quiet prototype for what came next. It showed how far the formula could bend before it broke. And that lesson carried forward. The series learned from it, even if it never really returned to it. And maybe that's what makes it stand out. It wasn't a failure, it was an outlier. A one-of-a-kind experiment that helped define where Resident Evil would not go. And in that way, it shaped everything that followed. Today, when people revisit it through the HD remaster, there's a kind of respect that wasn't there before. It's not seen as the black sheep anymore, more like the strange relative who tried something no one else had the courage to do. It didn't need to start a trend, it just needed to exist, to remind us that even inside a long-running series, sometimes the most interesting entries are the ones that never come back. If you've made it to the end, thank you. I really appreciate every single one of you so much. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that sub button. I really think we'll be over 5,000 subs not long after this video goes up. And that's, again, just insane to me. If you enjoyed the video, drop me a like and leave a comment. It really does help more than a lot of people realize. And for the mobile viewers, if you're feeling generous and want to help the channel grow directly, hit the hype button. Should be right there next to the like button. And again, I also have a Discord that's been popping off recently. There'll be a link in the description below and maybe in a comment. Come hang out. But that's enough of that. I appreciate all of you, seriously, and thank you so much for all the support. But as always, I'll see y'all later.